okay? You see me? No problem?
Yes, we see your screen.
Perfect. So welcome to this presentation about Power BI and Power Automate better together. So of course, the goal of this session or presentation is to make a tour to find the possible interaction between Power Automate and Power BI and see if we can make a toast with them. So I do not need to go to this side because I was properly introduced. Thank you for that. Just maybe it is important to say that I have also 3 cats. That's very common in the data community, I guess. So what I can say as well is that I'm interested into Power Automate because I'm lucky enough to work with Serge Lucas, which is Dr. Flo, which is very, very into the product, very specialized. So we start to work on that together as well. And the good news is that he is here tonight. So it is a good news for you because for the Q&A part, we will go deeper if you want. The bad news is for me because he knows Power Automate so good that he will, after that, tell me, oh, Isabelle, you forgot this and you forgot that. But I will do my best. Let's start. So the agenda, we will have a quick introduction because it is a short presentation about Power Automate 101. And then we will go through the different interaction. What is possible between Power Automate and the data set? What are the interaction with the data alert? What can we do? And that's my favorite part. What can we do between the Power BI REST API and Power Automate? What about Power Query? And because of Power Query, what about data flows? And then little conclusion and Q&A. So you have the menu of this evening. And let's jump to the introduction. Okay, just to remind everyone about the Microsoft Power Platform, I'm sure that you are very aware of that. We have different products. So I'm a Power BI person, but you also have Power Apps that allows you to do low-code application development, so create forms. And Power Apps is usually working hand in hand with Power Automate because Power Automate is all about the process and the workflow. So when you need some action, you will use Power Automate with Power Apps. There is a last child in the game, which is for virtual agents. And this is the possibility for you to create chatbots. All of those actors into the Power Platform, they are working with data connector. They have capacity with AI and machine learning. And they are also behind the curtain interacting with common data service, or what we call also Dataverse. To be up to date, sometime I need to update a little my slide. Okay, so regarding Power Automate, it's like in Power BI, all about the connector and the connectivity. And I'm not sure it is up to date. At the time I was creating this slide, it was about 400 different kind of connector that were available into Power Automate. And that means as well SaaS cloud service as on-prem databases, file, web APIs, even scripts. So you have a lot of possibility. You can connect to on-premises system via the data gateway, and you can create custom connector as well to even enlarge the possibility into your Power Automate solution. So you will find different kind of flow into Power Automate. You will find what are called schedule flow. I think it's quite easy to understand what it is. It's just flow that are triggered on schedule. You have the automated flow. There is a specific action that will trigger the flow. So this is really interesting because you will be able to answer to something. there are the instant flow. Usually the instant flow can be started with a button, a virtual one into an application on your mobile, but that can also be physical button if you want. So you may think about a button in your meeting room and you push on it and the flow will bring you your coffee. That's a dream of me, of course, but it's theoretically possible. You also have the business process flow that are more related to the kind of stuff that you do with dynamics. And then there is also a new possibility, which is the UI flow. With that, you are able to record your action if you have a legacy application, for instance. So you can create kind of macro. You can record what you are doing, and then Power Automate will be able to create the action and to allows you then to configure them properly. So it's really interesting and powerful as well. So let's have a look just at the big picture, because I'm a big fan of the diagram from Melissa Coates that you probably know. It's just to see here we are in the Power BI ecosystem with all the possibility, and in the part of related service we can find, and I will zoom on it, this is the Power Platform, so Power Apps, Power Automate, and Dataverse, which is a part of the universe, but you will see in this session that you can really use it to do some amazing stuff. Okay, so the first interaction that we will have a look into it's Power Automate and the Power BI data set. So if we think about it, on one side we have Power Automate, then we have the concept of a data source, and of course Power Automate is totally capable of reading or writing with a data source. If your data source is on premises, it will require a premium license. Premium license in Power Automate are quite different than premium in Power BI, so do not panic. But we will have some advertisement like that in the slides, so you are aware of it. Okay, so this is a very loose interaction that we can have between Power Automate and Power BI, because in Power BI we will have data set, and the data set can be from the same data source that is interacting with Power Automate. So this is not a direct connection. But what you can do with Power Automate is that you will be able to trigger the refresh if you want. Although, and it is important to know it, it's not a free pass to refresh your data set. So you will still be limited to the number of refresh, so 8 or 48, depending on the kind of license that you have in Power BI. Another interesting thing is that Power Automate is capable of directly writing, so in real time, into a streaming data set. A streaming data set is a very particular kind of data set, of course, but you can use Power Automate to collect and pass information and directly write those information into your data set. So the refreshed data set, I was just mentioning it. I will group the demo at the end, so I will do a big demo because we do not have that much time as a regular session. So let's move forward so far. So of course, there is the question about the on-premises interaction with data source. So it will be the same than in Power BI for Power Automate. Actually, you will use the same data gateway, the on-premises data gateway. The difference in the case of Power Automate is it is in both directions. So Power Automate can write and read the data source. Okay.
COC.
An interesting,
Pero no era opcional hoy.
Sorry, can you mute the micros,
Pronósticos igual.
please? Okay, sorry. So a new action, which is kind of interesting, is the fact that you can now use Power Automate to do what we could call Power BI data-driven subscription. So to do so, the idea is the following. So you have Power Automate, you have Power BI. Power Automate has a specific action that allows you to export data set to the format that you want. And in this case, you will need Power BI Premium. So it's a VIP option, of course, but that means, and I will show you a quick preview of it, because tonight I do not have a premium tenant at my disposal, but I still have the flow and the results. You can export the file. You can. You can export the file in the format that you want. And after that, thanks to Power Automate, you will be able to manipulate the file and to do whatever you want with that. So you can decide to have a list of subscriber and to send it in the format that you want to a subscriber by using a loop and saying, okay, for Mr. John, it will be a PDF, and for Mrs. Robinson, it will be a PowerPoint, for instance. So this is a really interesting scenario that is now possible. So far, we have seen action. We have seen action from Power Automate to Power BI, but we can also work the other way around. And by that, I mean that we can trigger a flow from Power BI. And to do so, we will rely on the mechanism of data alert. So in a dashboard in Power BI, you have the possibility to configure some data alert. So for instance, you have a dashboard when you have a KPI, and if the numbers are not good, a data alert can be raised. And by default, what you receive is a notification or an email. But you can also ask to trigger a flow. And once you trigger a flow, of course, sky is the limit because of all the possibility that you will have in your flow in Power Automate. So you can think about the action that will needs to be done to react to your data problem. There is not that much interaction, to be honest, between Power Automate and Power BI. So at some point, you will be like, and you will be like, okay, what's now? If you are managing a Power BI tenant, it's probably you already have made acquaintance with the Power BI REST API, because this is the best way to automate some action on your phone. So the idea was, okay, can I take advantage of the Power BI REST API with Power Automate? And so instead of using PowerShell, using the power of the flow into Power Automate to do some stuff. The good news is that it is possible, but you will need to create your custom connector for that. Once the connector will be created, you will be able, and again, my slide is not totally up to date because I think it's something like 300 and more now. You will be able to access to all the methods that are exposed into the REST API. And of course, so far we have seen 3, 4, 5 action, native action between Power Automate and Power BI. But by adding the REST API into the story, you will gain a lot of possibility, and this is where the fun will happen. Well, I feel, my opinion, of course. So to create the Power BI connector, it is not that difficult, because when you create a Power BI connector in Power Automate, you can do it by using the Swagger file of the REST API. So the Swagger file is a file that describes, it is a JSON format file that describes all the methods in your REST API. So I will show you that into the demo, but it is really convenient. And once it will be done, you will retrieve all of your action and you will be able to use it into your flow the way you want to do it. So I will show you that, so it will be more concrete for you. And I have put some links here into the presentation, so you can play after that if you want. Another native action, but this one is a little, what can I say actually? It's there for 2 years, I think, something like that. But it's still in preview and it's never evolved actually. So the action is the Power Query action. And this action allows you actually to connect only to a SQL database, an Azure database, and to use a Power Query online interface to retrieve some information. But it is very limited. So you cannot pass parameters into it. You can only retrieve one data set. So at the moment, it was quite exciting because, of course, by default in Power Automate, the way to manipulate huge data sets was not there. But this is a dead end. I even think that this action may disappear, because now in the Power Platform, it's all about data flow actually. So they are more into that, and you will find some action about data flow in Power Automate. So just to be sure to understand all the data flow are interacting with Power Automate and what are the place into the picture. So you may have different data sources like here. And of course, you want to be able to copy, combine, transform, refresh, extract, transform, load your data. And you will do that with Power Query Online, which is data flow. Data flow exists as well in Power BI, but there is also a version of data flow into the Power Platform. So at the same place, the Power Apps and Power Automate. There is still a little difference. So the destination of it can be Dataverse. This is the new name for the common data service, like here. Or the destination can be the data lake for the analytics data. So usually when you are using data flows into Power BI, they will end up into the data lake because it is an analytics version of your data when they are persisted, if you have premium, of course. And then you can, from Power BI, grab the data and use them. If you are using data flow in the Power Platform itself, so from within the Power Platform, at this moment, the result of your action will end up in Dataverse if you are in operational mode, or into the lake if you are in analytics mode as well. And again, when you are in Power BI, you are able to connect to data flow. The two kinds of the data flow are available. In Power Automate, what are the available actions for that? So you are able to refresh a data flow if you want, And you can also trigger a flow after the refresh of a data flow, meaning that Power Automate is able to detect that the data flow refresh is finished and then start something else, like sending you an email to say, hey, it's finished, or something more, more interesting and complex as well. So it's no time for the demo because I've just put a list of different stuff here. So now maybe we can have a real look to the product itself and see the different possibility I was mentioning before. Okay, so let's start, for instance, with the data alert. So if you remember well, here we have a very old and ugly dashboard, which is our travel expense dashboard. So you see it's very old because who is still traveling those days? I don't know. We aren't actually. And the goal here is to have an alert about the expense because my associate is sometimes having conference in Las Vegas, and that can be a problem. So when you see here, alert for an amount, if it is about $30,000, you will send me an email, you will send me a notification, and then you have this, use Microsoft Power Automate to start something. And so you are able from that to create a flow. And by the way, here I can show you if there are people who are not actually using Power Automate. So you will always find Power Automate into your waffle here, same as Power BI. And when you create a flow, you will always start with a trigger, and then you can add step. And of course, here you will easily find the name of your data alert, and then you can choose an action. And there are a lot of action. So let's move to another flow to see something else. Okay, pom, pom, pom. Yes. So for instance, I was talking about the action export to file for Power BI. So I will edit this one to show you how it works here. So again, the same logic. We triggered the flow. In this case, it is a very simple, just an example. It is a button, so I will manually trigger the flow somehow. But we can think about another kind of trigger. And then I will export, choose the action, export to file for Power BI reports. And then I will be able, because I am connected to my Power BI tenant, so each action is connected to a specific data source, a specific context. So I can choose here the report. I can choose the format. The same exists for the paginated reports as well. I can ask to use a specific locale. And what it is super interesting and super powerful in Power Automate is that you do not need to use constant here to hard code the value here. You can use what it is called dynamic content, meaning that in this case you can, as a first step, grab all the information from a table, for instance, on another data source or in a SharePoint list, and then you know that Mrs. Robinson will require to have the format in PDF, and Mr. Johnson will have the format in another kind of format. This action is very detailed because you can also add the filter and also they can be with dynamic content. You can pick the page that you want, and so on. If you are working with RLS, you can pass the user as well. So you will be at the world level security. So it is truly very specific in here. And then once you have performed this action to export your Power BI report in a particular format into a file, you can choose the next action. In this case, it will be sending an email. And of course, in this email, you will have the possibility to have the file content. So this is also the way Power Automate is working. So when you are adding step and step, you can always access to the content from the previous step. I'm not going into details because you can also use for each loop and conditional and all that will make your workflow working, of course. So those are very, very simple model. I will just try to show you the results because I managed to make it work once because I had access to premium. So you see here, I have received this one and the report was attached as a PowerPoint here. So it works. If you have premium, of course. Let's go back to our flow. Then there are other kind of flow in Power Automate that are possible. So if I want to create a new flow, for instance, like here, bum, 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 I will say also manual trigger flow, create here. Then I will just add a new step and look what is possible for Power BI. And you see, okay, export to file, done. Export to file for paginated report, it's done. Refresh a data set, okay. Add rows to a data set, okay. And then what can I do? So quite frustrating. At this moment, you may think about the REST API, and then you will say, okay, I want to create my own connector. I have a good feeling about it. The problem is that when you go to connector, okay, let's leave this one. It's not here that you will find your custom connector. You will need to go to data, and when you go to data, you can see custom connector here. And this is my custom connector. Looks not very professional with this logo. And here you see the different way to create a custom connector. There is the hard way, not for lazy people like me, because it is create from blank, but you can create it from different start. And for instance, you can import an open API file like I did. And for that, you will go, certainly not in picture, maybe like here. You have a Swagger file. So the Swagger file is a JSON file. It is available on GitHub, the one that describes the Power BI REST API in this case. And if you do that, and you add a name, like that. After that, I will switch to the already created one. It's like in the cooking TV show, the chicken is already in the oven. Okay, but it will be interesting to see here that this is not important at this point. You will have here, it is perfectly able to recognize all the methods that are into your Power BI REST API. The next step will be the security one, and the security one is that you will need to authorize into your Azure Active Directory the application to connect to the REST API, and then you will be able to use it. So I will just go back here to show you here the finished one. Here, okay. So you will need to have an application ID and application secret. I can send you the tutorial to do it. It's really simple. Does it work? Haha, that's the good question, of course. So I will go here to my custom connector. I'm picking an action, and you see that I have a lot of actions here that are available. So I will show you now one of the flow I have created with that. For instance, an interesting one is to create a new workspace. So in this flow, it's a very, very simple one, but what is interesting in here is that you can, of course, check the convention name, work with the Power Apps, a little form to it, and so on and so on. So we will just run the flow now, and we will create a workspace, sorry, pardon my Franglish, and we will name it for a break. I don't think I already have a workspace with that name. Run flow. And my flow is now running. And this is also something really interesting into Power Automate, is that you can easily see how your flow is running. And there you have access to all the information. So to do a debug, it is really nice. Let's see if it is really working by going here to my workspace, and I will ask him for the workspace for break. It's not there yet. Pom pom pom. Yes, here it is. Et voilà, my new workspace. Of course, a good scenario is to enrich that. So you can create a workspace and already put some template in it and add some members and so on and so on. It's up to you to make that a nice story. So I'm just checking at the time because I think, yep, that it is almost time for me to go to the conclusion. I have other flow as well, but I think that you get the picture here. What is important, and I will go back to my slide for that. Hop, hop, hop. So to conclude, there is a lot of possibility between Power Automate and Power BI. Of course, there are some interaction like here that are not direct between them, but you can write into streaming dataset if you want. You can use data alert to trigger Power Automate flow and do whatever you want. You can also use Power Query, although this is not the way actually, because I'm not sure it will survive the next years, this one. You can refresh your data set, but if you really want to have the power of Power Automate in action with Power BI, my opinion is that so far you will need to use a custom connector on the REST API, and it is really easy to create. And then you will have a lot of action to manage your tenant, to monitor your tenant as well. And that's super nice for a Power BI administrator. Et voilà. So thank you for that. And I think it's now time for the question. If you have some question, and I will be thrilled to answer to your question, as Dr. Flo will be as well. So I will just put my, maybe I need to stop sharing my screen. That.
So there was a couple of questions, Isabelle, so it would be good to go through those probably. So the first one was from Chewy about custom connectors. So those custom connectors, are they supported by Microsoft? If you build a custom connector?
What do you mean, are they supported exactly? Because of course you will not have a guy from Microsoft who will help you to tackle an incident on your own custom connector. That's for sure, because it's yours. And what is important also to know about connector, for instance, if you are using a connector, the power of your connector is always related to the way he's accessing to your data source. So yes, it's kind of up to you. But in the meantime, do not forget that you will access. Oh, okay. Serge, Lucas, so Dr. Flo is saying that they will help you. And on the other hand, what I wanted to underline is that if you are working with a REST API from Microsoft, like the Power BI REST API and not an exotic one, you may have more support than with some other source.
Okay, and following on from that, was a question as well about, again from Chewy, about if you use the custom connection, is it possible, are there any maximum number of connections on the Power BI side? So if you were connecting to, I don't know, 120 data sets or something similar, is there any kind of maximums around or any limits on the number of connections? I think that's what Chewy was asking.
That's a good question, because actually you can have some throttling on your connector, but I do not know what it is the limitation on the REST API, because this is the REST API that you are accessing. So normally you should have the same limitation if you are using PowerShell, for instance.
Okay, no, that's fine. Then one more, just going back a little bit further back. So Frank asked about premium functions or premium connectors. What does that look like from a licensing point of view?
Okay, maybe it's time to open the mic of Serge, of Dr. Flo, if he's agree, because it's a changing story.
Okay. All right.
So can you answer, Doctor?
Let me see if I can unmute
Is not muted.
I guess he's unmuted.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I'm here. Can
He's
you see
there.
me?
Yes,
Yeah.
hey, Serge.
Yeah.
Hello.
So indeed, well, maybe should I share the page with the pricing? So there is a page for Microsoft called Power Automate Pricing, where everything is summarized. I will just try to.
May need to make you a presenter.
Pricing.
Yes, you need some.
Yes.
Not sure. Catherine, can you make Serge a presenter, please? Not
Yeah,
sure
one
whether I
moment.
can do it or not. I'm trying, but I know why.
But I can share the link into the chat. So basically.
Now you're a presenter, if you like.
Thank you. So basically, licensing is something very complex and very confusing in the Power Platform, because if you have an Office 365 license, which is what most people have, you can already start using Power Automate and also the combination of Power Automate and Power BI. However, if you want to use the custom connector, you need indeed a premium connector. And there are different flavors of price if you want. The first is, there is a first one at $15 per month per user.